Drivers, start your engines!
Pick the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him. He talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver. Pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger. No sweating working for the man, alright. Well, hey. Well, I wanna be a firefighter. Cool headed when the heat is on, yeah. Save my baby from the burning building. Take her home with the sprinklers on, alright. Well, alright.
No, he didn't slam you, he didn't bump you, he didn't nudge you, he rubbed you. And rubbing, son, is racing.
Hey race fans, welcome to the Whoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to Drafting the Circuits. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we run through everything racing. Before we get started, let me introduce you to the panel I've assembled for you tonight. Excuse me. First off, Mr. Gray Warren from Richard Childress Racing. How are you, Gray?
Doing great, bud.
All right, Seth Eggert, Motorsports Tribune. Seth in the house. How are you, buddy?
Doing good.
All right, Richard Youden, race engineer extraordinaire. Looking for work still? Richard, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
All
I can be
right.
found on LinkedIn and all good professional social media networks.
All right, and our good friend Joey Barnes is off on assignment down at Homestead covering the Indy Lights testing, so I have my good friend Frank Linker from the Indy Sports Car Podcast joining us this week. Frank, how you doing today, buddy?
I am awesome, and thank you so much for inviting me on tonight there, Frank.
Oh, always a pleasure to have you on, you know, so. But anyway, so let's talk about this week in racing. We had the Cup cars down in Atlanta, along with the Xfinity and trucks there. Second week underway for NASCAR. We have Formula One out in Barcelona testing in the snow. I guess Bridgestone's got a new snow tire, maybe? I don't know. The Mazda Road to Indy gang, the US 2000, the Indy Lights, and then the Pro Mazda are all down there at Homestead running on the road course doing some testing down there. The Indy cars are heading off to Sebring for one final test before their season opener, which will be March 11th. So, but let's start off with Atlanta. Now, Gray, when we all made our picks last week, right, I think each and every one of us picked a Toyota driver, feeling that Toyota was still going to have a fairly dominant package on these 1.5-mile ovals. The race we saw that was dominated by the Ford cars, specifically dominated by Kevin Harvick, who finally won at Atlanta again after first winning there in 2001. He's dominated that track and not been back to victory lane ever since. But good win for Harvick, Keselowski, and Clint Boyer completing a sweep of the top three positions for Ford cars. So, great. Take us through Atlanta a little bit.
Yeah, it was a big weekend for Ford. I think Ford had 9 of the top 20 cars. So yeah, the Blue Oval Brigade did well. But it was a Harvick parade, no doubt about it. Harvick's had the best car down there for the last 4 or 5 years and had nothing to show for it. Won the pole last year, led the most laps, and it seems like the race would get stolen away for one thing or another. But he dominated this race from just about start to finish. Nobody could contend with him. He's got a secret there at Atlanta that nobody else has. He can get on the bottom of the racetrack and essentially drive away from the field, and that's what he did. But it was we did pick Toyota because basically we looked back last year and looked at the dominance that the 78 car had throughout most of the year on the mile and a half. Now, early on in the year, of course, you had Keselowski and you had Harvick picking up their wins, but was a strong showing for Ford again, and a lot of people were little bit surprised. I think the jury's still out. The picture will become a little bit more clear over the next 3 weeks when we go out to the West, and we've got a race at Vegas and a race at Phoenix and a race at California, and we'll just see if the Ford truly has made some gains on the Toyotas. We were kicking it around today and thinking about some things, why Ford showed so much dominance. We expected it at Daytona, but we were talking about why they showed a little bit more dominance at Atlanta. Going off all the preseason talk about Ford not having a new body and their aero woes from last year and that kind of thing. But I tell you, and this is just, I'll open this up to the panel to discuss, but we were talking today, and maybe this new Hawkeye or new optical measuring system that has been brought in has kind of maybe leveled the playing field a little bit for the cars, because it's closing the gap and closing up some of the loopholes that the Chevrolet teams and the Toyota teams were using to get by and gain somewhat of an aero advantage. So I heard one guy today state that he thought maybe that this being the case, that the new optical measuring system has probably leveled the playing field a little bit.
So
what do you think, Rich?
So you're saying it's keeping everybody a little more honest, huh?
Yeah. I mean that's the team's jobs. The team's job is to stretch the rules and work in all the areas for aero and to gain downforce and whatnot. And I think that with the new system, it's kind of cleaned things up a little bit. What do you think, Richard?
I think it's a new learning system. I think it could well be more of a case of the teams haven't worked out the loopholes yet and how to sort of trick the system as much as it's leveling them all out. At the end of the day, they're going to find ways around this.
Oh, sure they are.
The system is.
Yeah, and early on that may be the case, but
but you look at some of the teams. Obviously, we know there's been suspensions by crew chiefs and teams sent to the back of the grid already for improved changes. So they're still trying to play the game a little bit there, and you may start to see a bit more of a hierarchical pecking order come through. I mean, you got to remember last year. You look at last year, how long it took. Everybody says how dominant the Furniture Row was with Toyota, but it wasn't until halfway through the season that a Joe Gibbs car won a race. So
right,
and then they ran Toyota to the champ, all the way to the wire. So I think it's a learning process for all of the teams, learning how to fit within that window, but then also how to find the little cracks in the window as well, and see where they can push that envelope.
Yeah, and on the other side of the coin too, teams like Stewart-Haas and Penske, they have always run good on the mechanical grip tracks, and mechanical grip is as we know is very important in Atlanta. The oval track surface is worn out, and people work in those areas. So I wasn't surprised that the Penske cars and the Stewart-Haas cars did well there too. And of course, that made up a lot of the Ford brigade that had the good finishes. We'll see how things turn about at Vegas and see if the trend continues. And if it does, then the Ford cars may be on to something. But it was a good day for like I said, Harvick and his Stewart-Haas teammates. I think all four cars ran in the top 10 most of the day. So it was a good showing by that team, and I know they're pumped up, ready to go on this Western swing.
And it wasn't just a good day for Harvick; it was a good weekend. When we talk about Xfinity in a little bit, I'll get a little bit more on that. But I read a stat that in total he led 66% of the laps that he ran this weekend.
Yeah, no, and he did. He dominated the Xfinity race too. I think he led just about 90% of it. So and had the dominant car there. He's found a niche at Atlanta that he just knows how to get around that track, knows how to save his tires, and just can demolish a field. And he's been the dominant car at Atlanta for the last 4 or 5 years, not unlike how he's dominated Phoenix to a degree over the past 7 or 8 years as well.
Yeah, I think that track just absolutely suits his style. And even if you look at some of the, he had a couple of speed bumps along the way on Sunday. He had Logano was trying and Hamlin were trying an alternate strategy, and he found himself several seconds behind, and just reeled them right on in. It's amazing just how quickly he gets around that track. And I saw a few comments from other drivers, both after the Xfinity race and the Cup race, and it's just like Harvick just hasn't. They can't exactly figure out what it is, even following him around. It's so. But great job to them. Great job to that team, especially with Clint Boyer taking the third. Now Clint's a guy who's we've not heard a lot out of in the last couple of years, so it's a great result for him as well.
Yeah, Clint's another one that's needing to get a win and needing to have a good bounce back year. He took over the 14 car last year and got with mixed results. He was up and down during the course of the year. Didn't get a victory, but I look for that team to come together. I think Eric Almirola joining that group in the 10 car is really going to strengthen that team from top to bottom. And Almirola has had, he was leading the Daytona 500, led the Daytona 499 and a half, and couldn't come away with the win, and ran well again this weekend. So that 10 car has really is showing some promise for this year too in the Stewart-Haas camp.
Go ahead, Seth.
Something else. Another stat that I saw this weekend. At one point, Stewart-Haas Racing had all 4 of its cars in the top 7. The last time Stewart-Haas had all of its cars inside the top 10, and it was not a restrictor plate track, it was only a 2-car team with Tony Stewart and Ryan Newman.
Wow, that goes back a few years.
So you're saying they haven't had 4 cars in the top 10 since Danica joined the team. Seth, you're just another Danica hater, aren't you?
that goes back at least 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to. Yes, that's quite remarkable. But Atlanta. I tell you, we were very fortunate to get that race in. It was delayed by rain, and I think it got the green flag some 2 hours late. But and surprisingly enough, with threatening skies, they were able to run the full distance. So that was very good.
And exactly when they threw the checkered flag, it started raining.
Yep, sure did. It spit a little bit, just a little bit in mid-race, but it never did cause for a caution or anything. It was a little light mist, and it quickly went away. And you're right, Seth. Just as soon as the checkered flag dropped and they were doing the post-race interviews, it started to rain again. So yeah, that was really good. I think that kind of hurt the crowd a little bit, the walk-up crowd at Atlanta. They had nice temperatures all weekend long at Atlanta. In fact, the Southeast had pretty good weather. I hated the rains came in and threatened it, because I'm sure that did hurt a lot of their walk-up crowd for race day.
Yeah, it looked like they're a lot of empty seats there, but they missed a good show. They missed the Kevin Harvick clinic. So, but just real quick, Seth, you mentioned Ryan Newman. And, Grant, I just want to ask you real quick, speaking of Ryan Newman, I did notice both last week and the week before, Ryan Newman is now carrying Cabela's on the car as a sponsor. Is that a full season deal for the 31 car, or is that a partial one? Because that's a pretty big name down around where I live anyway. Yeah, it's pretty popular.
Well, Cabela's has been purchased, I believe, by Bass Pro Shops, so it's part of their brand. So I'm sure that's and of course RCR's had a long relationship with Bass Pro Shops. You'll probably see Bass Pro on some of our Xfinity cars and maybe on Austin's car throughout the year. So it's just one of the sponsor packages that the teams put together that will appear on 31 car from time to time and as an associate from time to time on the 31 car as it goes. And hats off to Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman had a really good car in practice and qualifying, qualified on the outside front row, and actually jumped to the lead at the green flag and led the first 17 or 18 laps of the race, and had a solid top 5 car until he had a right front tire fail. He got up and slapped the fence and had to come to pit road for repairs and lost 2 laps and ended up finishing, I think, 22nd. But, that was a good run for the 31 team. They were really, really happy about how their car showed. Unfortunate that they had some trouble, but the car did show some speed and some promise. So they're another team that's going out west, looking to run good at these next 3 races coming up. And I'll remind you that Newman ran very well in the preseason testing out at Las Vegas, so they're very excited at going back.
Yeah, it could be a great year for your whole team there. I mean, it just really
started off
with a bang. Yeah, sure did. So
we'll have to wait and see. Jury's still out. After 2 races, you really can't, how this thing's going to pan out, and we'll get a better feeling of how things go after these next 3 races, and we might see some trends begin to develop.
Absolutely, but knowing that you've got one guy in the chase has got to be, that's one thing checked off the list.
That's right. Well, that's what everybody shoots for in the regular season, is to position themselves to be in the chase, and that's all you can ask for right now. Because once you get those last 10 races, anything can happen.
Right, and great job to all those guys. Now, Seth, let's talk a little bit about the trucks and Xfinity then. We had already mentioned that it was, again, another Kevin Harvick clinic in the Xfinity race, but who else did you like in the race? Who else looked good? And then let's talk about the trucks a little bit as well.
Well, first in the Xfinity Series, you had John Hunter Nemechek making his debut. You had Chase Briscoe making his debut. John Hunter, he ran well. He was extremely loose at the beginning of the race, was sliding all over the track. He unfortunately got into Cole Custer after getting a tap from Elliott Sadler, and that sent Custer into the wall. A few years ago, if anyone remembers, Custer and Nemechek had a rather interesting finish at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
Was that the fist fight?
Yes.
Yes, that was...
But this clearly wasn't intentional. Custer thinks Nemechek was running too hard too early, but that's up for debate. Briscoe, again, it was his first start in the Xfinity Series as well. He ran quietly inside the top 15, ended up finishing 16th. Nemechek ended up having a tire go down as a result of the contact with Cole Custer. Fell 1 lap down, was able to regain that and finish in 4th in his debut race. Going over to the truck series, well, before I leave the Xfinity Series, Kevin Harvick won in the 98 car, his 98th career NASCAR win. You are
the numerology expert on our panel, Seth. You always come up with these just boom. I mean, but that's very interesting. I think numerology is very interesting too. But yeah, cool stat.
And going to the truck series, it looked like it was going to be the Kyle Busch Motorsports show for most of the race. Noah Gragson led the first stage, won it. Kyle Busch dominated the second stage, was dominating the third stage. Final pit stop with about 3 laps to go. Kyle Busch is having a slow pit stop, and he elected to go not knowing that the left rear tire had the lug nuts taken off for a 4-tire stop. About 100 feet, 200 feet past this pit exit, the tire just rolls off the truck, and he comes to a complete stop, reverses all the way back, restarts dead last. On the restart, Brett Moffitt, who's still using one of the OEM engines, not the NT1 spec engine, gets a better restart than anybody else, gets out to the lead, and wins for Hattori Racing Enterprises, their first win as a team. His second win since 2016. Now, mind you, Moffitt has had a couple teams and opportunities fall out from underneath him. He was a development driver for Michael Waltrip Racing. We know what happened there. he moved to Front Row Motorsports when David Reagan was subbing for Kyle Busch. And that fell out from under him when the sponsors elected to go with Chris Buescher in 2016. He went to Red Horse Racing, which that fell out from under him when the sponsors never materialized and the team shut down. And now he's with Hattori Racing Enterprises and is still a championship contender, winning the second race of the year.
Awesome. Great job to them. So now we're off to Vegas. Now our trucks and Xfinities, is it a three?
It is
another triple header weekend?
And it is the first triple header weekend for Vegas.
Yeah, because Vegas used to had a standalone truck race.
And now they have two triple headers, the only track on the schedule as of the moment to have two triple headers.
When is their next triple header, Seth?
I know it's during the playoffs.
So in the fall sometime.
Yeah, June 16th, the weekend of June 16th. Or, sorry, September 16th.
Okay, I was going to say, I was thinking June, yeah.
Yeah, I got the numbers backwards.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's like, I just had to think about it for a second. June, the playoffs start early. So
I got the numbers backwards. Sorry.
That's roundabout first Pocono time, right? So what other news coming out of Atlanta? I mean, I want to touch a little bit on the penalties for Truex and Furniture Row. And this is, again, the brand new optical scanning thing. The comments I read is like they just couldn't get the car quite legal. You have any insight as to? I know that it says some suspension and some body panels, but how far off were they? Is this again like with the LIS? Is just we're talking fractions, or was there just
it was fractions? It was fractions. I'm not entirely sure just how far off they were, but they were the only team that was far off enough that they weren't able to qualify. Now, the team will tell you that they didn't have enough time to go through again and attempt to qualify. NASCAR says there was enough time, but if they failed a fourth time, whether it was then or any other point in the weekend, it wouldn't be that they just lost their car chief who was ejected for failing 3 times. They would have also had a 10-point penalty.
Yeah, and you don't want that any time in the season. I know it's early, but that can come to bite you.
So they elected not to attempt to qualify and start last. The other part of the penalty was the last half hour of final practice. They were black flagged, had to go to the garage, and they could not work on the car.
But it didn't turn out too badly for them. Truex walked away with the top 5, I believe. I think he finished.
Yeah.
He finished fifth, right?
Yeah,
right. So
he did, and I tell you that 78 teams known for being innovative. Let's put it like that. And they've run afoul of the inspection process before. Even last year during their strong run to the championship, they had times where they would run afoul of the LIS machine and things like that. So that's not unusual. Those guys, they do their job, they do their homework, and they push the envelope like they're paid to do. So yeah, not surprised. They'll get their house in order, and they'll still be one of the teams to beat as we move on forward.
And now, going back to the truck series real quick, I said the tire came off of Kyle Busch's truck. There is a rule that if you have a tire that was not installed properly, that the tire changer, tire carrier, crew chief, and I believe the tire specialist would be suspended for 4 weeks. Technically, the tire wasn't installed. They were in the process of uninstalling it, but the audible came before the lug nuts could be reattached. That being said, Kyle Busch's crew chief Kyle Busch's pit crew at Atlanta for the truck series was not his Cup pit crew, as some assumed. it was made up of members of the Stewart-Haas Racing pit crew who were moonlighting in the truck series. So depending on what NASCAR decides to do, either they'll be penalized and suspended from truck events only, or they could be suspended for up to 4 weeks for all events, which would affect, instead of just Kyle Busch Motorsports, multiple teams that had nothing to do with it and were not even participating in the race.
Conspiracy theories. Here we go.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that penalties goes down like that, that'll be the end of moonlighting for a truck team. For these guys, yeah, and that's honestly that's a chance for some of those guys to earn a little additional income while they're there for the weekend, and for them to get penalized from their primary job for what happened with another team, I think is just wrong any way you cut it. But yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of eyes on that announcement when it comes. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing is who made the call to leave. Was it the crew chief? Sometimes it's the spotter. Because normally, you'll hear them. They'll for some reason shout "dig." I mean, I don't know what they're supposed to do. Get a shovel out.
No one's admitted who made the call as of yet.
But over the radio, they'll be able to hear the radio's recorded. Surely.
Well, what I was going to say is it was just a slow pit stop because of the new air guns. They were having trouble on the front tire.
Surely not.
Which some people think Kyle took it upon himself seeing other trucks coming in his rear view to gun it.
Yeah. I mean, if they can, I'm sure they've got the audio. They must have the audio, and they can sync it with the video. And if it genuinely is him going on his own accord, then he should get the penalty. But, of course, they're never going to do that, are they? But if it is the crew chief shouting or the spotter shouting, I mean, if it's the spotter shouting, then surely a penalty should come his way, not to the other guys that were just trying to do the job. It's certainly not the fault of the tyre carrier. I mean, the tyre specialist. I mean, that's a ridiculous penalty on the tyre specialist because he has nothing to do with the pit stop.
But going back to the penalty itself, the rule is installing the tire. They've never installed a tire. Therefore, technically speaking, that rule doesn't apply in this case.
No.
We'll just have to pay attention to how that one comes out. Yeah. Now, speaking of the new air guns, right? Harvick had an air gun failure on a pit stop, did he not?
The gun was reversing back and forth to tighten and loosen on one stop, and on the same stop, when they went to do the left front tire, the air hose exploded.
Yeah. So who gets the penalty for that? NASCAR for mandating the gun?
Well, he came back in to make sure the tire was tight, and he dropped to like 15th or 16th in the running order, and by the end of the stage was back in the lead. So
yeah, it didn't hurt him too much, but if it wasn't Harvick with the dominant car, that gun failure could have really ruined somebody's race, particularly if it was quite a bit later in the race. So.
The 78 had some gun troubles. Was another team that had trouble with their guns, among others. And I think that's another thing too. That's the new rule this year, where the guns are handed out at random to the teams. They're all the same. It's one of the things that the owners had asked for because the pit gun development the cost of it had gotten to be rather high. And that's one of the things that they wanted to do to kind of cut some costs. So that's why that has entered the game. And I think it's going to take a little bit to obviously work out some of the kinks and the bugs in that system too, because there was several teams that went away very unhappy about it after Atlanta. That's another thing we're going to have to watch over the next 2 or 3 weeks and see how that program progresses.
Yeah, like with anything new, it's got its growing pains. Now, yes, Seth.
And just one note on that. The guns are all the same, but just like how Goodyear recommends a tire pressured and the teams don't have to exactly go by that, the manufacturer of the air gun recommends a pressure for the air hoses. You don't have to go by the pressure, but then again, there is still a maximum pressure that they can't go over, period.
Right. And from what I gather, they are issued the regulator as well. So it's It's a whole system, and it's like you said, it's new. They've only used it at Daytona, so this is the second race for it. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, there's going to be some issues from time to time. The pit stops, along with the guns being slower, and the and losing a man, being the over the wall pit crew being cut down to 4 people, with an additional 5th guy being the fueler. It slowed the pit stops down mightily from what we've seen in years past. So that's another thing that we're going to see kind of develop and go on as the year goes also.
All right, so now, Frank Linker, you've been kind of quiet over there in your little corner because the NASCAR's out of your realm of expertise. So I'm going to give you the first
pick.
Couldn't
be
so
further.
I'm going to give you the first pick for Vegas.
Jimmy Johnson?
Well, you know what? Jimmy needs some good luck. I tell you, after Daytona and after Atlanta, Jimmy could use a good result. So
I seen him on a commercial last night.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, good enough. Seth, who do you like for Vegas?
For Vegas, I'm going to go with Keselowski.
Oh.
Okay, so Richard, you had evidently planned to go with Keselowski, so who would you like to take for Vegas?
Blaney,
good call. And Gray? I'm telling you, I'm gonna see. Let's see. Who do I want out there? I'm gonna have to go with the Toyota. I'm gonna say Kyle Busch is gonna prevail at Vegas. Hometown boy,
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm gonna say that Kevin Harvick wins 2 in a row. And picks up a win in Vegas. So with that being said, NASCAR, all 3 series be at Vegas next week. Now, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Formula One testing in Barcelona. They've got some bitter cold temperatures. They got a little bit of snow. We're seeing the first visor cam videos with the halo, which is causing quite a stir on social media from fans. But I've not heard a lot of backlash. Negative comments from the drivers. So, Richard, you paid close attention to this. Let's talk about Barcelona. We're 2 days in. I know that by the time our show airs on Thursday, we're taping Tuesday this week, that there'll be 4 days of testing in. But so far, Ferraris, Mercedes, and Red Bulls have all shown some speed. And Williams, their reserve driver was fastest, wasn't he? Or faster than the guy who took his spot. So I'll let you take it away from there, Richard. Give us a little report on the first 2 days of Barcelona.
Yeah, so the first thing that came out, aside from all the car launches that we've seen over the last 10 days or so, Williams posted I guess what they call a visor cam video from Robert Kubica doing an installation lap on their filming days, and the idea was to see what the halo looks like. Now, of course, I think what you have to remember is, as a fan, everybody looks at the halo and go, "Oh, it's in the way. How can the driver?" These drivers are looking 500 feet down the track, because their respective sort of depth of field is such that hardly any driver has even commented on the vision distortion from the halo, which is potentially an advantage for that system over the windscreen style system that IndyCar has in place. But that's a completely different debate for a completely different day. Some of the interesting things I think coming out of the first 2 days at Barcelona, Christian Horner's complaining already.
No.
Yeah, I know. Take a seat, everybody. Renault potentially are having strategic engine changes. The rules now that teams can use 3 engines per season.
So Renault, a Rolex engine now?
Pretty much. It's it'd be interesting to see how many. There are going to be at least. I mean, if you've got 3 engines per season, that's 6 races at least, isn't it? Maybe 7 races. 2 hours per race, yeah. I mean, you're into the by the time you're doing all the practice and qualifying, you're into at least 20 hours of running life per engine. So you're getting there towards an endurance engine these days. So Renault are talking about that a little bit. Christian Horner's already bleating on that subject, which unfortunately doesn't make news anymore because he does it all the time. Which, it does detract a little bit from that Red Bull, which looks like a pretty competent car. It looks a lot more from the video clips they've seen. The rear last year was Red Bull's issue, and the rear this year looks a lot more planted. Their traction appears to be better than they've had in the past.
The overall car looks great, I think.
Yeah, I think they do. It was very strange they had that interim launch livery, which was around for a week. They didn't test with it, and then they just launched the same livery they've run for the last 4 or 5 years. Unless somebody in the graphics department at Red Bull, wanted a bonus or something, I can't quite see why they did that. Honda have been pretty impressive. Probably picking up from the gains that they made throughout 2017. Of course, now gone over to the Toro Rosso team rather than McLaren. I just looked at some numbers here briefly before we came on. So in the first 4 days of testing last year, McLaren with the Honda engine did 208 laps. At an average, their fastest time at the end of each day was an average of 3 seconds off the pace. In the first 2 days of testing this year, and bear in mind the weather hasn't been great today, so they probably did a reduced number of laps. Toro Rosso have done 175 laps, so almost as many in 2 days this year as McLaren did in 4, and they've only been 1.9 seconds off the pace. So, that, and you would like to think that the aero side of the package from McLaren is going to be closer to the Ferraris and Red Bulls and Mercedes than Toro Rosso would be. So I think that Honda engine has probably picked up a good 2 seconds in the course of the year compared to everybody else. So they've got to take a lot of credit for that. A lot of credit for that. It's an interesting talk today came from Renault that they're going to be pushing Red Bull for an early decision on where they will be with engine supply for next year. There's a sort of written May deadline for when engine manufacturers have to submit their allocation for the following year to the FIA. So Renault have said they're going to push Red Bull for an early decision. Now, the thought is that if Toro Rosso get on well with the Honda and it's a reliable competitive engine, then Red Bull will move away from Renault and go to Honda. Now, it's interesting, from a McLaren standpoint. Obviously, they've sort of bore the brunt of the teething problems over the last 3 years with Honda, but did they sacrifice potentially a competitive engine to keep Alonso, who, in all fairness, is coming towards the end of his career, just to get a Renault engine in there, which maybe is better than the Honda engine at the moment, but come the end of the season, come next season, will it be a better engine package? I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, if it blew up in their face like that, it would parallel Alonso's career.
Of course,
you know what I mean. He's wrong,
yeah.
wrong place, wrong times. Since 2005. So,
but I think it has. I think one thing that has come out of the first 2 days, reliability in general is massive. I mean, for the last 3 or 4 years, you've seen Mercedes go out and do 100 laps, 120, even 130 laps a day, just lap after lap after lap with hardly any issues. A lot of the teams are in that position now, which shows how far this sort of the engine package has matured now, and teams are getting on board with that. The teams that have had a couple of little issues, McLaren had an issue with the wheel coming off yesterday, not a huge issue, probably just a failure of a nut there. That's something you want to happen in pre-season, so you can reinforce that. They also had an issue with the exhaust system with the Renault engine, but again, that's nothing major compared to what some of the teams are seeing in previous years. But it does set up this year, I think, obviously the Ferrari, Mercedes are going to be up there, but then you're going to have this fantastic battle of the Renault engine cars, the Red Bull, McLaren and Renault. It's going to be a fascinating battle. McLaren won't have anywhere to hide this year. They've got to, be up there. They've got to compete with Red Bull. They've said for the last 2 or 3 years that they've got the best aero package in the grid. a lot of people from Red Bull would argue that they've got the best aero package on the grid. So the fact that you're going to see McLaren going toe-to-toe with Red Bull with the same engine is going to be fantastic. And also you'll get a chance to see how far Renault have developed with their package. Obviously, they've been in a couple of years now back as a manufacturer, team owner, and they've put a lot of money back into that team. And it'll, now is about when it's going to start maturing, and they should be seeing results. So you could see 5 or 6 cars right up there, really pushing each other. So it could be a great season.
Could be, but let's ask the important question on the table, right? I know after day 2, Vettel was fastest, right? Valtteri was second. Is this the year that Ferrari topples Mercedes domination and gets another title? It's been a while since Ferrari's had a title.
That's a good question, isn't it? It's too early. It is too early to say. I mean, if you look at it last year, Mercedes didn't lead any of the first 2 days or 3 days last year, and then they went on to dominate pretty much.
Yes, absolutely.
So
yeah.
It's very, very difficult to say. I mean, everybody's doing their own program. I mean, Sergei Sorokin was 25 seconds off the pace yesterday. He was just doing aero runs all day at 150 kilometers an hour. So it's difficult to really put a value on any of these times. All you picking out of this really is reliability and ballpark figures of where teams are. The Haas, the Saubers are a little bit further back than you'd thought, the way you'd expect. Toro Rosso looks to be doing reasonable with the Honda engine. McLaren's a little bit higher up now. They've got the Renault engine in the back there. So it's all looking, nothing earth-shattering has come out. No crazy car designs, nothing like that.
Well, Sauber
have really pushed their car design, but I think it was... Sometimes you've got to... There's one way of looking at it, talking to a few aerodynamicists, that if a car is slick and simple, the chances are it's fast because their aerodynamics are efficient. If you've got lots of widgets and gadgets and gizmos coming off every possible appendage, it probably means that the aerodynamics are not particularly efficient. And
spoken by a true Williams F1 X.
Oh yeah, aerodynamics is never that
steering wheel can't be any more or less.
Yeah.
I mean,
in all fairness, in the years I was there, the only reason we were successful was because they had a Mercedes engine in the back of it. It certainly wasn't from an aerodynamics standpoint. But it is. The Sauber Sauber's probably the biggest change from last year, but it's a little bit. I think they've thrown more downforce generators on the car rather than making it aerodynamically efficient. But it'd be interesting to see. I can't see them leaping, massively. They may, push Haas a little bit more. They may push Toro Rosso. All of those sort of teams are going to be fighting in that packet. It's going to be a fascinating season. It really is, because it's going to be so tight, I think.
Yep.
I do have a nagging fear in a way for Williams. They've been seeing a lot of good things, but without an experienced driver in there, you wonder where they're going to be going. And the car looks good. The car looks efficient. I think they've gone a little bit down the road of, this bit looks really good on a Ferrari, and this bit looks really good on a Mercedes, and let's plug them all together. And sometimes that can work, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see where that goes. And the other sort of announcement that came out, I think it was today or could have been yesterday, is that the Martini and Bacardi branding are leaving Williams at the end of the year, which is a shame in a way, because it is the most, to my mind anyway, the most sort of sophisticated looking car in their livery. It's very elegant. It's very sleek. It never really
Martini stripes on a white race car. I mean, date back to the old Porsches at Le Mans. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
I was so glad when Martini came back in the sport, and now I'm bummed to see them go again.
It's an iconic look.
Of course,
it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there when they came in, and in a way, it's been a little bit of an unfulfilled promise. I mean, and again, marketing people, apologise to any marketing people out there, but they do tend to oversell and underdeliver. And they were very much, every airport you go in, when you go through the duty free, you're going to see Martini branding and, the Williams cars on display in all major airports and all this sort of stuff. And it's just never really got there. And, yeah, it's a real shame because I think from a visual perspective, it looks such an elegant and sleek car. And it'll be a real shame that... and hopefully, they can keep up that branding with another supplier. They've had that sort of whole... I often think of it as like, that sort of British sort of sophistication, if I do say so myself. Look,
that's not biased at all.
No, but they've had like the you've all seen the commercials that they've done where all the pit guys were in the suits and I think it's Hackett sort of men's outfitters and all this sort of stuff, and the martinis and a very sort of elegant appearance. And
kind of like a little James Bond
swap.
Yeah.
What channel is this commercial on?
Maybe it was only in the UK. I don't know. But you hope they don't end up going down like the Force India route and end up looking like a kid's colouring book.
Or the John Player special cars that load.
Yeah, something like exactly.
Yeah.
You want those iconic looking cars in Formula One, and sponsorship can be good. I mean, I think the Ferrari this year looks like they're missing a sponsor. I know they've lost the Santander branding for the first time in a long time, but you look at that Ferrari and somebody's forgot to put the sponsor logos on, and the same with the McLarens. Now I know McLaren keeps saying, "Oh, we've got a big sponsor coming," but until somebody actually sees that sponsor, I don't know where they are. But you really hope that these teams can keep that sort of elegant look. As I say, unfortunately, I think the Force India looks horrific.
Yeah.
Well, the next Williams is going to look like, right? It's going to say Lance's daddy's money on the side of the car.
Exactly. Yeah.
My goodness.
Russian flag on one side, Canadian flag on the other.
Say Papa Stroll. Papa Stroll.
Stroll Incorporated.
All right, so let's...
Formula. Well, I noticed in it. Maybe Formula One needs to do a retro weekend like NASCAR does at Darlington and bring back.
Oh, it'd be great, wouldn't it? But
can you imagine having the blue Elf car and the John Player special, the Marlboro McLaren? Yeah, I would love to see that.
Williams from the mid-90s, the Camel and Cannon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, or even go back to the Saudi Airlines Williams. I love that, the green and blue, yeah.
And the Brabhams.
Like a throwback.
The Brabhams.
When I was actually, before they got Martini as a sponsor, I did see, probably wasn't meant to see this, but there was a complete car mocked up with Qatari Airlines at Williams. They were looking to get them in as a major title sponsor, and it was that sort of purple finish to the car. The Martini one looked far better. But yeah, so there's certainly brands out there they can pick up.
Yeah.
But if there was a team in F1 that had some sponsorship issues and could get a sponsorship, it'd be Williams. I'm sorry, they just do great in just finding sponsors when they need it.
I think they do great in finding sponsors. I don't think they do great in finding sponsors with lots of money. I think that's...
Well, they just get a whole lot of them. I mean, quantity. I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Laker, I want to leave you ample time to talk about the MRTI. So, Formula One, Australian Grand Prix, March 25th. So that's a few weeks out. We're looking forward to the start of a new Formula One season. So, with no further ado, Frank Laker.
I thought you were going to ask us to make picks then. I thought that's a bit quick.
No. I'm just,
what, like a winner real quick? We can do that, I guess. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, Mercedes. I don't know.
Robert.
I'm going to say Verstappen. I'm going to say Verstappen's going to be the wild card of the year.
Well, come back on the show in 2 weeks to make your pick for that, okay? So,
there you go. Well, no, I'm saying for the year. For the year,
okay. All right, I'm going to hold you to that. You buy me a beer. Buy me a beer at the season-ending banquet. So, but anyway, so
O'Doul's, you got it.
O'Doul's, yes, sir. Anyway, Frank, thanks for coming on the show. I know you. For our listeners who haven't caught you on a show before, don't listen to you regularly, you can hear Frank and his wife Missy on their show, the Indy Sports Car Podcast. And Frank, you're always in the MRTI pits at the racetrack there, and I know you even had one of our fellow journalist friends call you out and say you're always in the kiddie pool or the kiddie pits, but man,
we play in the kiddie paddock.
The kiddie paddock. That's what he said.
Quote?
Yeah.
Yep,
that's the quote. Yeah. So, but I mean, that kiddie paddock is the next generation of open wheel stars there, and if you look at the 9 rookies that are going to be in the IndyCar series this year, who are going to be starting more than one race. We've got 9 rookies, and the bulk of them came out of the Mazda Road to Indy program. So let's talk.
Ed Jones, say no more, right?
Ed Jones, say no more, in the Ganassi car this year. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about the Mazda Road to Indy. Just briefly, some of our listeners know a bit, some don't. And then let's talk about these testing down here. And I know you've had a chance to chit-chat with some of the drivers, and you've got an announcement that just happened.
All right. Well, we'll start off with the announcement because we've been hearing them since I think the first one was Mid-Ohio last year. Santi Urrutia was hinting that he was going to have an IndyCar ride. He's racing Bilardi Racing in Indy Lights this year full-time. So that's the breaking news of today. So there you go, everybody. Santi will not be in IndyCar, unfortunately. Not that nobody seen that coming. But anyway, moving on. Starting USF 2000 now. I mean, MRTI, it's just like you said, Frank, and I couldn't say it any better. It's the stars of the future. Great personalities, and very accessible. Always, if you go to a race and MRTI's racing there, go there all 2-3 days of the racing, and you'll have a great time. And they're very accessible, just like the IndyCar guys are, but they're a little more accessible than IndyCar guys. But great personalities, and some great racing. I think we voted last year the best race of 2017 season. Pro Mazda race number 2, Road America. Believe that? So there you go. It was Anthony Martin and Franzoni, which Franzoni won Pro Mazda Championship last year. So he got the scholarship, stayed with Youden Coast Racing, and is racing in Indy Lights this year. So, but starting in the USF 2000 series, just going by the past test here at Homestead, Caitlin Frederick, the young Caitlin Frederick, top of the charts at the end of practice. I mean, just really, really happy for him. Followed by Rasmus. I don't know how to say his last name. Lindh. Lindh. Still gotta get used to these guys. Lucas Cole. He's not a rookie. He's coming back. Kyle Dupel and Kyle Kirkwood. Kyle Kirkwood is a driver to look out for in the upcoming USF 2000 Pro Mazda. I mean, he'll be an IndyCar within about 4 to 5 years, no doubt about it. Looking down the list, Calvin Mink stands out to me at 8th right there. Looking down. Darren Keene. We just had him on the show. Really good guy. And really, the entire field within 2 seconds of each other, all the way down to 20th. So that's how close these guys are in USF 2000. So St. Pete, when that green flag waves and they come into that first hairpin turn into 1 and into 2, I mean, that's going to be some amazing, fun, exciting racing. And good on MRTI for live streaming it wherever you can watch live stream, YouTube, Facebook, whatever you want to do. So that's USF 2000. Anybody have any questions on that, Frank, or because I know you know a little bit about MRTI there.
Yeah, I'm just interested in the test times. What I mean, and the USF 2000 you're talking, it's a pretty solid, durable car. There's not a lot of aerodynamics on there. There's a lot of, it's just like watching, it's just a few steps up from a Formula V or a Formula Ford. These guys don't have a lot of aerodynamics. There's a lot of side-by-side, slipstream and drafting. It's just really fun to watch.
Oh yeah, it's the tightest chassis, and the great thing about USF 2000 is they call it the USF 17 chassis. They're basically, if you make it to Pro Mazda, you take your chassis with you and you just replace the parts. Put a new engine in it or tweak it any way you want. Put another 100 horsepower in it, and you're racing Pro Mazda. Which great move by Anderson Promotions, if I do say so myself. really entices drivers to come over and race here, you know? So, but yeah, 23 drivers in total. I have a feeling by St. Pete there will be more, and plus we'll have the national class up in there as well. So, before I move on to Pro Mazda, anybody want to say anything more about USF 2000?
No, sir, I'm good. Just
Alrighty.
continue on, yeah.
Okay, Pro Mazda, the creme de la creme as far as I'm concerned. It's right now it's 15 drivers that are listed. The talent pool is deep, the deepest Pro Mazda lineup I have ever seen personally since I've been following it for the last 6-7 years. Carlos Cunha just had the speed the entire testing at Homestead, and I'm not surprised. Stingray Rob, I am surprised. This is his second year. But it's a new car, the PM18, and is it not a beautiful car, fellas? Come on.
It is.
Right?
I sat when they unveiled the car at Indy. I was sitting with Chris DeHardy, and we were sitting with a guy from Mazda, Jade, guy that wrote the book Beast, you know. Jay Gurse. I was sitting between Chris Hardy and Jay Gurse when they unveiled that car, and we were both like, "Wow, that's a beautiful race car." Yeah.
You mean DeHardy only said "wow"?
No, I said "wow."
Oh, okay.
DeHardy was probably playing with his phone.
Yeah,
I was talking to Jade. I don't know. We've had Jade on our show. He wrote the book Beast, which is about the Mercedes engine. The pushrod Mercedes engine, Ilmore, that Penske brought and dominated Indy with. He also wrote a book about Dale Earnhardt Jr. and he worked with Mazda for the last couple seasons, and now he's off doing some other projects of his own. So good dude, though. Good dude, Jade. Yeah, you know Jade, right?
I have met him before. Yes.
Yep. Yep. Anyway, continue. We've got about 5 minutes left in the show, so.
Okay, great. I just want to mention, as far as talent pool, we got Robert McGinnis is up in the Pro Mazda. Happy for him. Parker Thompson, huge, just win for Parker. I'm glad he's there, and he's really shown some speed as well with the sophomore team of Exclusive Autosport out of Canada. David Malukas is up there, which he deserves it. Oliver Askew, just a phenom that came out of nowhere last year. Nikila Stockton is back. Renus VK is up from USF 2000. So a lot of talented drivers from USF 2000 last year, came up in the Pro Mazda this year. So Pro Mazda is going to be I think, just the creme de la creme of talent and great racing throughout the entire season. I really can't wait. So moving on to Indy Lights. Not as big as a field as Pro Mazda, almost half, I would say. Only 7 drivers participated in the last practice at Homestead. Santi Urtia finished out the checkered, but check out a great article by Joey Barnes, Motorsport Tribune, talking about how Santi Urtia got there. It's very interesting. Ryan Norman was right behind him. Pato O'Ward, big friend of the show. He actually does our intro. Funny little intro to our show, so definitely check it out. You'll laugh. We were. Aaron Tielitz, friend of the show many times, was right behind him. It's always scary, but that's an inside joke. Victor Franzoni, winner of Pro Mazda, the championship last year with Juncos, stable Juncos, Dalton Collette, and Colton Herta. So, and they were all separated by less than a second. So that is really amazing, to be honest with you. Quality over quantity, I suppose, in Indy Lights, huh?
Yeah, I think Colton Herta's got a bright future. Since you mentioned him there, that's the guy. He drives for Steinbrenner, right?
Yes, he does.
Yes. Steinbrenner, who's he's the grandson of the guy that owns the Yankees, or son, or
somebody named Steinbrenner.
George Steinbrenner the fourth. He's related to the same Steinbrenner family that owns the New York Yankees. Yeah, but and that's Colton Herta is of course the son of Brian Herta. Who's IndyCar owner along with Michael Andretti. They'll be running Marco this year together. So but Colton, he's been pretty impressive, and I see him in IndyCar in another 4 or 5 years too. So, but for me,
I would say 2 years. What do you
probably
think?
2 years. Yeah. Hard to say. I mean, I'm old. Time flies for me. So, 2 years, 4 years. What's the difference? So, the only thing about Indy Lights that I always find disappointing is that how we've got a really large fields for US, F2000 and the Pro Mazda, but the Indy Lights, they've had a tough time trying to get a large field for Indy Lights. I remember a couple of years ago, the Freedom 100 was contested with 6 cars, and it's a great series, but I think there's such a cost jump from
it really is
from the from Pro Mazda to Indy Lights, and it would be great to see more team owners to get in there, especially when you look at the success that guys like Ricardo Juncos has had, where he's now put a team in IndyCar. But it's a work in progress. I think, pound for pound, the talent of the driver that enters the IndyCar series coming through that ladder series, it really prepares them for what IndyCar is like. You agree?
I definitely. I mean, Matthias Lace, look at him. I mean, rookie last year, Indy Lights, and Foyt this year. So
Foyt
there you
this
go.
Year, yep,
right?
Yep. And we've got 9. I mean, Joseph Newgarden is a product of the Mazda Road to Indy champion. Yep. So, but
Hinchcliffe. Yep.
Hinchcliffe, of course. Yeah. Run Hunter Ray. No.
Yeah, I mean the list goes on and on. I mean it's more than half the field by now. And the one name I did not mention, he did not practice, is Shelby Blackstock, but he will be back. He will be in Indy Lights this year. And,
okay, good. I like Shelby.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I like Shelby Blackstock because funny story because Shelby Blackstock's mother is Reba McEntire, and No, I know
I'm kidding.
My wife was blown away by that fact when we were at the Indy Lights race, and Reba comes out to sing the national anthem. She's like, "Oh my gosh, Reba McEntire! I love her." I'm like, "Yeah, her kid's in this race." Really? You know what I mean? Just the little things that we might take for granted that other people know. My wife was just blown away. Reba McEntire was singing the national anthem at the Indy Lights race, but there she was, and Shelby had a pretty good run that day too. So, but we are out of time. But I'm going to give enough time to go around the table real quick. Give everybody one quick final thought for the evening, and I'll start with you, Gray.
Looking forward to going out west for the next 3 weeks. Should get a preview of what we're going to see throughout the first half of the season on these mile and a halves.
All right, Seth, you get a really quick thought.
I just saw this piece of breaking news. Chip Ganassi Racing's president, Steve Lauletta, is going to step down.
Okay, that's a developing story. So, Richard, it bums me out we didn't talk about Formula One's new streaming service, so you got 3 seconds to just mention it.
I hope they don't try and turn it into an NFL coverage.
All right, excellent. Frank Link, you got one final thought for the night before we go off the air?
Anthony Martin getting to Indy Lights, and I want to officially say that Christian Alessio, I know I said his last name wrong, but he is our official third mic of our show now. We're very happy to announce that, and find his book, The Outside Groove, on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles.
All right, and we get find the Indy Sports Car Podcast. You guys have a you're on BeanPod, right? And Podbean. I'm sorry, my bad. Podbean, okay. And you guys have a Facebook page as well, so check them out. You guys are on Twitter as well.
Right.
Again, my name is Frank Santoroski.
Yeah, I mean iTunes, Stitcher, wherever. Yep.
Wherever, sorry, right. I was trying to sign off. Anyway, my name is Frank Santoroski. This is Drafting the Circus on the Whoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank you guys on the panel. I want to thank you folks that listen in. Been a great show tonight. We'll talk to you all in a week. Good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Whoobazoo.com.
Enter website.